So we've done a lot of work getting ready to write a I Am From poem by reading a lot of models and talking about what the form of this genre is and thinking about how to express your identity through poetry. And so remember that your goal for this piece of poetry is to describe your identity. We're working with the concepts of using repetition to flow through and transition through different pieces of who you are and what makes you who you are, including your culture, your experiences, your language, your sexuality, your gender, your choices, your religion, all of those different ideas that come together to make you uniquely you. Oh, relationships. And so we're thinking about using simile and metaphor, which are comparisons of you, experiences, ideas to something else to give it more meaning. Also adding a lot of sensory detail to help your reader feel like they're within that part of your identity or experience or relationship with you. And so we're structuring those blocks or stanzas in your poem with potentially, if you'd like a frame, the phrases I am from, I am, or I come from, something like that. Um, Remember that the message of your poem should be how you have changed over time and grown up, or how you have shifted your identity, or what you're processing through of who you are. So, in your notebook, you're going to start by brainstorming. And this is a trash draft, so it doesn't have to look any certain way. It is just creating content for you to narrow down to use in your poem and to help you structure your poem. So, your trash draft, if you're looking at this slide, it can be a list, it can be a free write, it can be bullet points, it can be sentences. You can try out some poem stanzas or lines. Your trash draft is something that you can conceptually share, like what you wrote about, kind of like when we share creative writing, but it doesn't have to be shared word for word. But in the end, remember that your poem is something that will be published and viewable, that you will share. So make sure you're comfortable getting into a place where you can share your poem. Your trash draft in your notebook is you working through and writing about the things, the sounds, the smells, language, voices, people, relationships, colors you actually see, descriptions of places that are important to you, feelings you have over time. Um, it can be, you can start trying out some comparisons or some metaphors. You're trash drafting a concept of where you're from or how you have been created or made into who you are. And so you can think really, really small, very small details. Consider or explain out some significant memories that have shaped some of the qualities that you have. You can think really, really big and do like overall the feeling of relationships or something like that. To get you started on your trash draft, I'm going to write a couple questions that can help you and also show you mine. All right, so a couple questions to get you started. Choose one of these if you want. You don't have to, but they might help you get free writing. So, who am I? Why am I the way I am? How did I become me? How did I get my personality qualities? That can be all options to get you started, kind of like a creative writing prompt. You can also choose to start your trash draft with I am from and start filling out like different listing things about where you're from. So, for example, I am from, and you can talk about places, or you can do an I am from, and you can talk about like relationships. You can do an I am from, and you can do memories. So if you want to start like blocking off different sections of your life, you could do one like choices. and how you've accepted or rejected different qualities or situations or identifiers that have been assigned to you. So these are like block considerations to get you going. Again, you can do it however you want. Trash drafting does not have to look any one way. It should look different from everyone else's because you are a different person. The more content you can create during your trash drafting, the better start you will have on your poem. So I trash drafted and I did a free write. So I kind of wrote about my life, and again, here are some of the options. So you can free write, you can trash draft, lines, poems, ideas, bullet points, listing, however you want to do it. I chose to do a free write. I wrote in teal, and I kind of just described people, and I started with I am from. I used I am from, and I described places. I used I am from, and I described like memories that have shaped who I am. I went back in orange. I added details. I added brackets to kind of group things together. I added people's names and different symbols that represent other people to me. And so that's how I created my trash draft. To get started with my poem now, I reread my entire trash draft. So I set a timer for 15 minutes and I wrote without stopping for fluency. And then I reread my trash draft. I got a new page, and after I reread, I recognized what are some ideas that I see come up over and over again in my trash draft. And I recognized that I talked a lot about my relationship with important people and mostly how I felt through them. So I used the I am from to get me going with my blocks or my paragraphs or stanzas. And so I used my first block, and some of this language moves over to write this section describing part of my identity as relationships that I have and feelings I have in those relationships and how they've changed me. So in my trash draft, I focused on my brainstorm on people relationships in this first section that I wrote, and I identified and I kind of blocked off after I reread it. So if you look at this part of my trash draft, I move over phrases and ideas into writing my poem. So, for example, this word broken, I wrote like a line about what that meant to me. I have people's names, but then later I wrote back kind of symbols that represent those people's names. And this word laugh, and you can see here, like these are symbols and words that I wrote that come from here. And so what I did about relationships and how they identify me come from my trash draft, and I rewrite them conceptually in my poem. And it doesn't have to be any certain way. You can take these ideas and write them into sentences in blocks, and that would be perfect. I focused on laugh and smiles a couple times when I reread my brainstorm, and so I made sure that was in my stanza as well. I talk about I don't want something to continue, and I write the word instead contradiction, which means like two things that are opposite. And so I took the ideas and the actual words from my brainstorm. I rewrote them into kind of a consolidated, which means shorter, paragraph. And that represents to me my family and relationships. So this stanza to me represents the relationships that I've had that have defined that part of my identity and who I am, where I come from, where I'm from. And that's what I did. So I'm going to start that again with this section. And I already started my stanza. And I recognized I started again in my rough draft, thinking about cities and places that have made me who I am. I used this word, ancient history, here. So I'm moving over words, but also it's like the memories of these places. and how they have made me feel. Some scarred, some beautiful. I'm going to next take some of this descriptive language that I write out in my trash draft, colors, feelings, different smells from the different places, happen to be a lot of flowers. After that, I kind of noticed a shift in my trash draft where I talk about things. So, like books were something that changed me as I became an English major and I read and I learned. So, I'll have a block about places and then I'll have a block about things. And then down here, I'm going to write experiences. So things, learning, books, that's like things. So I have relationships, I'm going to have places, I'm going to have objects, and then I'm going to have feelings. And that's how my my poem's going to come out of my trash draft and into different blocks that I can define of who I am. You are free to write your poem however you want. That's how I did my process, and it might help you along. But to hear me thinking about how I wrote my poem. But again, the purpose is to show your identity and how you have formed into who you are. Your message is, this is who I am. And so it shouldn't really look exactly like mine, but it can, to help you get started if poetry is kind of a difficult thing for you. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to say it has to look a certain way or it has to be perfect or I'm doing this wrong, I'm doing this right, and have self doubt. As long as you're trying it, you're doing it right. We can always make revisions, but try it and try the brainstorm and try to move over your language into a poem, and then we'll go back and make revisions. Um, but you can't do it wrong if you're trying. Thank you so much for writing poetry with me. Bye.